Welcome to Spruce Grove Alliance Church, your home.
Well, good morning. If you have been here, or if you haven't, we've been going through a series this summer called the Somebodies of the Old Testament, not the Nobodies. It's nobodies who became somebody as they entered into God's story. And this morning, we're going to be going through the story of Joshua. That's me. No, hold on. Where is it? Is this going to work? Oh, it's off. That's why. Don't worry, guys. When in doubt, always check to see if the computer's plugged in, right? So this morning, we're going through the story of Joshua. And we get to know Joshua actually slowly through the early pages of the Old Testament in the Torah. And so who is Joshua? This is a question that I do ask myself from time to time because my name is Joshua. But also this morning we're going to ask not of me, but of the biblical Joshua. And so we first meet him as a young warrior commander. I don't know if you do this, or maybe you watch that old Charlton Heston movie like I did when I was a kid, and I remember seeing Joshua in Egypt. You know, he was a stonemason, whatever. And I was like, oh man, Joshua's just been around like a big piece of the story. No, first time we see him is not back then. It's actually as a warrior commander in Exodus 17. And here, he is against the Amalekites at the Battle of Rephidim. Has anybody watched the Promised Land series? Anybody? Okay, listen, I'm about to introduce to you an amazing comedy show, okay? Watch it or don't, but it's quite biblical, which is actually very good too. But in that show, they have Moses. It starts with him standing. Maybe you remember, this is Moses, the battle, where he's got the staff over his head. And if he holds it over his head, then the nation is going to be winning. And as soon as he lowers his staff, well, then the nation loses. And if you watch that show, he gets tired, and then you can hear people in the background, they're killing us, right? Because it's true, unfortunately, right? But that's the battle we're talking about. Quite the miraculous battle was the first one that we get to see Joshua in. Joshua was victorious. And I want to point something out in the aftermath of the battle. Okay, here, first of all, are his roles. First, he was a young warrior commander. He was Moses' aide, which many of you guys already knew. Courageous spy, and also then became the leader of Israel after Moses. But here, oh, this is the picture. I had a picture, guys. I actually prepared a picture. That's it. But this is the passage I want to point out. The aftermath of the battle, Exodus 17. After the victory, the Lord instructed Moses, write this down on a scroll as a permanent reminder and read it aloud to Joshua. I will erase the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Moses built an altar there and named it Yahweh Nissi, which means the Lord is my banner. Joshua wins this battle, and God wants Joshua to know what? That he was with him in the fight. He goes, this victory is absolute. And Moses builds this altar to God that says that they name the Lord is my banner. Yahweh Nissi, Jehovah Nissi. This statement is highly significant if you actually look into the full life of who Joshua is. The Lord is my banner. This will, as we go through the life of Joshua and we go through his other roles, this is going to be a reoccurring theme that he remains constant in throughout his entire life. If you've ever watched an old historical battle, because some of us might not understand what a banner actually did, but if you've ever watched an old historical battle scene, you may have likely seen soldiers carrying flags. Okay? Something like that. That's not a flag, but that's a banner, right? And it's got a statement on there. And I'm not a Roman scholar. I just picked it, right? But these banners were used primarily as rallying points or as a source that would guide orders in the direction of the army. The rallying point for Israel, their banner, was God in this case. Yahweh Nisi, Jehovah Nisi. The Lord is my banner. The banner for Israel was also a sign that the Lord is present and a source of victory in times of physical and spiritual warfare. I say that in the sense, too, where God is our banner does not just relate to the story of Joshua in an actual battle, not just a physical battle. Because if you're anything like me, I don't think any of us have actually been in a war. Maybe some of us, okay? But this also relates to a spiritual battle as well. That God is our banner. May he be our rallying point in any time. And so the rallying point for unity and victory in this battle came from God, not from a human warrior. And Joshua understood this. God is actively engaged in the battle. He is the commander that Joshua listens to. He is actively leading the way. When Joshua would turn around and see Moses with his arms held high, that is what he saw. God is leading the way. A banner of hope in times of physical warfare for the nation of Israel. If they turned and they saw Moses wane, right, maybe their hearts got a little waning as well. And if they look back at Moses like, no, I'm putting this up, the banner of God is being lifted high. He is leading the way. And so here this morning, like it's spoken as a reminder, like it was spoken to Joshua, maybe we need the same reminder, right? Because I think we face trials of many kinds. And so we need to be hearing this sometimes from somebody. And for Joshua, it was Moses, Jehovah Nisi. Or it was through Moses, I should say. The Lord is my banner. He should be our rally point in the midst of our battles. God is actively engaged in our battles. And he has come to bring hope and victory. Maybe not in the ways that we would always want it to be. But we are in a war. And I want to say, I've seen him move quite a few times. I started a list when I was youngest, and I started making my way till now. The amount of times, because I haven't been in a physical war, but I've seen him work in spiritual war many times. And I'm sure many of you can point back to times where you've seen God pull through, where you've called out, and you've turned your eyes, you're like, I don't know what to do. And the only thing your eyes can think of is like, I just need to turn to God and figure this out. I need to call on him. And so there's many times where I've done this in my life. I remember when I was 11. This was the first recollection I could recall. And my mom and sister almost died in a car accident. My mom somehow walked away from this accident. She had 4 shattered vertebrae in her spine, and she broke her neck. And she got my sister out of the car and then just collapsed on the side of the road. And I remember just watching my dad walk through that and have to tell me. And the peace that somehow he found to bring to us as a family, only later did he point to God for that. When I was 17, before I believed in the demonic at all, I remember I watched a woman who, through the power of prayer, became free from something that my eyes could not comprehend. When I was 18, overcoming the battle for my mind of fear and spiritual darkness. And I remember I was praying and it just felt like I couldn't get anywhere. And so I had to ask for help again. And my brother and his friends came over and they prayed over the house and we prayed together and the peace that we found together. And when I was 25, I watched God help me as I was about to say yes to going into ministry. And the doubt and fear that would creep in right before you walk in, just seeing how God would show up and speak into my life. And so what's your battles? Right, this is just a few. I could point to many even just this year. Do you see the banner? Yahweh Nisi? Is that over your life where you're in the battle and something starts to go, it starts to get tough. It starts to get almost a little too tough. Your energy is getting strained. And do you turn and you go, Yahweh Nisi? The Lord is my banner. Moses is somebody holding the staff. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's a spouse. Somebody reminding, God's your rally point. Or perhaps we turn and the rally it's not there. We haven't put it there. There's no one there that is putting it even there for us. We leave them out of the equation. And instead, the rally is retreat. Doubt and fear have crept in, right? May I remind you this morning, Yahweh Nisi, Jehovah Nisi. The Lord is my banner. He is mine. Is he yours? He was Joshua's. I want to touch on the next point in Joshua's life. As Moses' aide. And there's some passages here, okay, that I want to pop up. Just in this story where we get to see Joshua as Moses' aide, maybe for one of the first times. In Exodus 24, there's this account. It says, "Then Moses set up with Joshua as his aide, and Moses went up on the mountain of God." And so Scripture never really specifies exactly how far up the mountain Joshua followed Moses. It never really says exactly how far, but we know that he went with Moses up the mountain. Exodus 24, it says this, "Then Moses entered the cloud as he went up on the mountain and stayed on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And so we do know that there's a moment, though, where Moses and Joshua are not together. Moses enters into the cloud of God's presence, and Joshua stays maybe just outside, kind of camps outside. And the reason we know that is because later on we have this account in Exodus 32. It says, "When Joshua heard the noise of the people shouting, he said to Moses, 'There's a sound of war in the camp.'" And so Joshua's surprised. He doesn't know exactly what's going on down there. He doesn't know what's happening. He's been on the mountain, showing this great dedication to follow Moses. Could you imagine walking up to the presence of God? And Moses walks in, and you have to stay on the out. Would you feel a little frustrated, maybe some bitterness? Like, how come I can't go in there? Joshua, we don't get to hear any of that. His opinion doesn't really change throughout the rest of his life. So it would point that he sits there just diligently. The Lord is his rally point. It's almost like Joshua's standing on the side of the mountain or just camping out. And it's like him waving that flag, right? The Lord's my rally point. I'd rather be nowhere else than right here, just beside the presence of God. And here's another thing too, is Joshua wasn't in the camp when they all turned from God and made a golden calf. His steadfastness to follow God is full. He didn't fall away. Have any of you been on a hike, though, for at least 4 days, even, like let's say even 2 days, and you pack everything in? How much food can you fit in your backpack? You have to maybe a tent, maybe you have like some sleeping bag, whatever, but how much food can you actually fit in there? Right? Here's a picture of the suspected mountain of God, okay? Ooh, man, there's not much up there, right? If you're like, oh, I'll walk up the mountain, there'll be some like trees, maybe a stream. I don't know. Look, guys, it's looking pretty bare, right? And so I think Joshua, it just shows his dedication even more. 40 days, 40 nights, to stay up there, to ration your food over that amount of time, your water. Moses probably would have come out to eat and drink as well, right? And he would be tending to him. That's quite a big dedication. you'd be fasting for a good portion of that time. Actually, when I was much younger, I remember that there was a movement in our church, not this church, it was a different one that I was attending at that time, of young men, actually. And they were wanting to seek God in new and tangible ways because they had this vision to reach young people in our city. And so I remember my brother specifically, I didn't jump in on this. I was like, let me observe, right? My brother and one of his friends, Nick, had decided to go on a 40-day fast, seeking to spend time with God. And my brother didn't make it very far. He got, I think it was like 10 days, which I was impressed with back then too. I was like, 10 days. Well done, right? But he kind of looked at me, he's like, there's no way. He worked in construction, and his body, he would go to work. His body couldn't do the work that it needed to do. After 10 days of fasting, of just water, he couldn't do it. So he had to kind of pull back. But I remember Nick made it the full 40 days. Nick was a drummer as well on the worship team. And actually, near the end, I will never forget it. He was drumming. He was drumming. And so at the end of the 40 days, he drums, and then after the service, the worship team had to help him get off the drums because his body was so strained even from just playing the drums for the ones, for the service. Just so he can go and get taken care of. But the young men in our church made this drastic, desperate, seeking God moment. After his direction, they went on a journey to follow him. Nick actually later that year went on to be hired as one of the pastors in the church. And he invited me and a bunch of us. We stepped in to stir up this movement that he pushed, which was to reach young adults, young people in the city. And we met everywhere because he was determined. We're not meeting in the church. Young people don't want to meet in the church, is what he said. So we met in warehouses and sweaty gyms. Is that a place we wanted to meet? I don't know. I remember playing worship, and you're trying to play your guitar, and the smell, they just did a workout right before we got in. So you're like, all right? You just have to get in and focus. We met in other people's houses in smaller churches, but that group grew so big that we actually had to stop meeting in other places. We had to go back to the church because it could hold us. And we met on Sunday nights, and I remember eventually the lead pastor looked at Nick and kind of said, I think we need to marry this with what the rest of the church is doing. And so, because that young people, it didn't end up just being young people, it was people from all ages, because we didn't just keep it to young. We had tables at the back, it was a different kind of feel. And I remember the full church adopted that in, and the church grew in that time. And so Nick, just like Joshua, dedicated to God, dedicated to seeing his direction, seeing his way, his purpose, to learn, to be discipled, to walk alongside him. How often are we going to just even sit on just outside of the presence of God? Just to be around maybe Moses, who's got a lot more wisdom. You see, this mentality would lead Joshua to eventually take over as the next leader of Israel and actually finally lead the nation into the promised land. And so here, I want to look at the next piece of who Joshua is. Okay? The courageous spy. Joshua, along with 11 others, one from each tribe, were sent on a mission into the promised land to scout and see if they could take in a bunch of different things. Okay? Did it look like we could take them? Was it actually fruitful? Was it filled with milk and honey? Was it just like a desert? Because we don't want a desert, right? We've been in the desert for 40 years. But they would go from city to city. They would take in all of these different things and come back and report. And so 2 spies, Caleb and Joshua, many of you guys know the story, said this after the 10 spies had already, the other 10, had seeded doubt into the nation of Israel. They came back, those 10, and said, there's no way. Have you seen their walls? Actually, those people are huge. They're massive. Ain't no way we can do it. And so after they've had their say, this is what Joshua and Caleb say. Numbers 14, 6-10. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied on the land, tore their clothes and said to all the congregation of the people of Israel, the land which we passed through to spy it out is on exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. And then all the congregation said to stone them with stones, but the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the people of Israel. You see that similar theme in these words here? Verse 8, if the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land. He will direct. Only do not rebel against the Lord. Quick warning. In verse 9, and then this, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. Joshua and Caleb both understood God is with us. His banner is over us. Do you remember that, nation? Do you remember? They were so struck by this. They're like, how are you guys believing the other 10? They're tearing their clothes. They're like, do you not see how serious we are? The Lord is our banner. He is our king. And we're going to, I guess, live in the desert for another 40 years. Like, what are we doing? Yehovah Nissi, here it is again, right? The Lord is our banner. God is with us in the battle. Even after Joshua went into the land, saw 31 different kings, 31 armies and kings, Joshua says, if God is with us, he will bring us into the land. Do not fear them. The Lord is our banner, right? I don't think you understand. 31 kings in the nation of Israel. I was like, man, that's a lot of kings, right? It's a lot. If you actually put Israel and you blew it up to the size of Alberta, you know how many kings that is in the size of Alberta? It's like 947 kings. Did you know that I was like, that's a lot of kings. Did you know, even if you took all of the cities and towns and hamlets and all of the, even small jurisdictions, it doesn't even add up to that. So every single town and blip and reservation you see, there's a king, right? And you need to overcome all of them. Joshua's like, got it, right? The kind of faith you would need to have to go into the land and see that and go, no, God says this is where we go, this is where we go. God is with us. And we finally see Joshua then become the leader of the nation. Does Joshua change his stance once he becomes leader? Oh, you know what, Moses, I think you guys hanging out in the desert, I'll do the same thing. Nope, right? And so I want to begin with one of the most famous passages all of you guys probably have heard, or most of you, Joshua 1:9. But we're going to read a little further, okay? Joshua 1:9-11. Have I not commanded you? This is the Lord talking to Joshua. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your provisions ready. 3 days from now, you will cross the Jordan here to go in and take possession of the land. The Lord your God is giving you for your own. 40 years of in the desert with Moses. Joshua takes over. He's like, you got 3 days. We're going. Maybe it was a little bit more before this exact moment, but you get my understanding, right? He puts the nation on notice. He says, we have not listened long enough we're going to move. Get your stuff ready. His faith was ready to move. But this is where Joshua also reminds the people, right, that the Lord is our banner. And I want to go to Joshua 3. The Lord is going before us. Joshua 3, 1-3. Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. That's the order. That's when you know we're going. The priests will go first with the ark. And so Israel, when you see the ark, when you see that which carries the presence of God, when you see God, the banner of the ark, that God is with us, he's our rally point, we follow him. We follow the ark. We rally behind God. That's who we go with. A reminder to the nation who had forgotten to trust God, a full generation who had witnessed God take them out of Egypt, cross them over the Red Sea, through the wilderness, a generation who watched manna fall down from heaven, a generation who witnessed the presence of God descend among them. That generation said, no, we're not going. And they died in the desert because they didn't trust God that he could help them win the next battle and the next one and the next one for the promised land. And so here's the thing. If you don't want to follow God, you don't have to. If you hear a direction from God, guess what? You guys know this. You don't actually have to follow the direction. But just don't be surprised at the dusty desert you might find yourself in, right? I think sometimes we find ourselves in this crusty, dusty place and we go, man, how did we get here? God, how dare you? And he goes like, sometimes have you looked in, right? Have you looked at your life? There was a season of my life, I remember, God telling me to follow him in this specific way. To finish my degree, because it took me like 8 years to finish my degree and become a pastor. He's like, why are you dragging your feet? I was dragging. And I remember feeling surprised at the silence I found myself in for 3 years during the end portion, where I go to my Bible, and it just felt like a struggle. I go and read, and it was just cool information, knowledge. But it felt like my relationship with him, that conversation that we would have, that direction I felt in my life where he goes, change this, do this, that part of it was gone. And I remember just being frustrated by that. Me and my wife, we talked about it at length. And I remember talking to my dad, getting so frustrated, I go and talk to him about it. He said one thing. He said, he's like, what was the last thing God said to you to do? And I told him. He's like, well, did you do it? I was like, no. He's like, how about you go do that first and then see, right, if God says something new, right? I remember it was like the obviousness to that response. It's like, why would he tell you something new if you didn't even do the last thing he told you to do, right? Like, of course that makes sense. And so with Israel, 40 years, sitting out in the desert, are you surprised? He didn't even do what he told you to do last. Walk across the Jordan. If you've ever seen the Jordan River, it's actually quite small, right? Wouldn't take much, right? They're like, nope, not going over there. 40 years, and now Joshua is like, we got 3 days, we're going. Reminding the nation of all that came before. And Joshua led the nation into the promised land behind the rallying banner of the ark, the very presence of God. The Lord was going before them, and the coolest thing happens. They walk into the Jordan, a really pathetic kind of looking river, right? Maybe it was great at the place they crossed, but I've been there. maybe like 20 feet. But the same things happens. It's almost like God's making a statement to the nation. Do you remember that moment when I took you out of Egypt and we crossed the Red Sea? Right? God goes in with the priests, his ark, enters into the waters of the Jordan, and the water splits. God going, remember, I'm your banner. You forgot. You've forgotten. God was still with his people. And at Jericho, the next few stories, right? The ark went before them as they marched around for 7 days around the city. They had a bodyguard that went with the priests carrying the ark. And they went around and they blew trumpets or horns, right? Probably more like a shofar, I would imagine. Okay? And they carried the ark around. God would go, he went first. And at the end, one of the most miraculous things happens, another miraculous battle of Joshua where the walls fall down. At Gibeon, later, they get into the promised land now. Joshua cries out to God. There's another moment where he goes, no, you're our banner. You're the one that's going to provide victory today. They're against not one, not two, 3, 4, 5 kings, right? And on the day the Lord gave this is what Joshua says, Joshua 10. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, sun stand still over Gibeon, and you moon over the valley of Ajalon. And so the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies. And as it is written in the book of Jasher, the sun stopped in the middle of the sky, and delayed going down by a full day. There has never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a human being. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. Right? Just caps with that one statement. God is fighting for the nation of Israel. God remained Joshua's banner. Joshua does not forget. He goes, we are in this real tough spot. And he calls out to God. He's like, we need more sun. Day's not done yet, guys, right? We might be losing right now, but we will not lose. Right? Maybe they weren't losing. Maybe they were just winning. He's like, we need more time to finish this out. God was the commander. God was the rally point. God was present in the battle. And even to the end of Joshua's life. Let me close with this story about the close of Joshua's life. Joshua 24. This is how he closes it out. Joshua 24. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourself this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. This passage gets a little long, and he keeps going in. Joshua keeps testing the nation. He's like, are you going to? Are you going to? They're like, yes. He's like, are you sure? And it kind of finishes here in verse 21. But the people said to Joshua, no, we will serve the Lord. Then Joshua said, you are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen to serve the Lord. Yes, we are witnesses, they replied. Now then, said Joshua, throw away the foreign gods that are among you and yield your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel. And the people said to Joshua, we will serve the Lord our God and obey him. And on that day, Joshua made a covenant for the people, and there at Shechem, he reaffirmed for them decrees and laws. And Joshua recorded these things in the book of the law of God. And then he took a large stone and set it up there under the oak near the holy place of the Lord. See, he said to all the people, this stone will be a witness against us. It has heard all the words the Lord has said to us. It will be a witness against you if you are untrue to your God. Then Joshua dismissed the people, each to their own inheritance. Joshua faithful to the end. Says, told the nation, serve the Lord with faithfulness or don't. Choose now. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Yahweh Nisi. The Lord is my banner. Do you feel the weight of that last statement of Joshua? I know I've said that a few times. There's one song, I can't remember what it is. Right? But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. There's some moments where you look at the world and you look at how tough it is, and you go, oh, man, and it's almost like your mind comes to this moment. For some reason, saying that statement over myself is, it's just what I need. To get over all of the other battles that might be waged on that I can see that I'm like, I don't know how we're going to do it. And it's like, no, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And then he says, he makes a giant rock as this rock is witnessed, which I mean, it's a rock, right? But it's like another symbol of that banner. If you forget this, nation of Israel, remember this decision that you've made when you look at this rock, that the Lord is your banner. He is who you said you would serve. God is actively engaged in our story, with his story. He has come to bring victory and hope. And so what battles are before you? What stands maybe do you need to make in different places where it seems like there's that question that Joshua was asking at the end of his life? Serve or don't, what are you going to do? In this moment, you have a stand that you can make, that you need to make. Are you going to put God back over the top? Say, as for me and my house, in this situation, in this place, in this area of my life that I didn't know I needed to, I feel like I need to. The Lord, as for me and my house, I'm going to serve the Lord. He's my banner. Do you see that banner, Jehovah Nisi? Yahweh Nisi. And so as we go through our lives, whatever battle you face, whatever path you take, remember this, that the same word given to Joshua is given to us. The same word given to Joshua at the start of his leadership, that the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. That famous passage in Joshua 1:9. In the midst of our battles, he is there. And may we also then say, as for me and my house, right, we will serve the Lord. Let's pray and close today.
Thanks for listening to this week's message from Spruce Grove Alliance Church. For more information or to hear past messages, please visit sgac.net.